The narrow, rain-slicked road cut through the dense forest like a dark ribbon, leading Eric Hawk closer to his destination. This small, isolated town, nestled deep in the woods, had become the focus of local news for all the wrong reasons. The headlines were filled with horror, gruesome deaths, bodies torn apart, a beast preying on the unsuspecting townsfolk. The report spoke of an unknown creature that had killed several people, leaving the town in a state of fear and desperation. Eric had seen the news coverage and recognized the signs. He knew what they were dealing with, a werewolf, and if the beast was as vicious as the report suggested, there was no time to lose. He had to act quickly before more lives were lost. Eric, a well-trained and powerful hunter from a long lineage of werewolf hunters, was on the trail of this monster. His strong hands gripped the steering wheel of his battered truck, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Beside him, his silver sword lay within easy reach, a constant reminder of the deadly task ahead. His special shotgun, loaded with silver bullets, rested quietly beneath the sword. Eric was prepared for the worst, as he had been countless times before. His training had made him a formidable opponent, well versed in self-defense, and strong enough to face the beasts that lurked in the shadows. As he drew closer to the town, the forest seemed to close in around him, the trees pressing in from all sides. The dim glow of the town's lights was barely visible through the thick canopy. Eric's mind was sharp, his senses alert. He had a feeling that tonight would bring him face to face with the creature he had hunted for so long. Suddenly, his headlights illuminated the massive silhouette of an 18-wheeler truck stalled on the side of the road. The driver, a man in his mid-30s, was hunched over beside the vehicle, clutching his stomach as if in pain. Eric slowed his truck to a stop and rolled down his window, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "You need help, friend?" Eric called out, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The man didn't respond. Instead, his body convulsed violently, the sound of bones cracking and flesh tearing filling the night. Eric's instincts kicked in. This wasn't an ordinary man. He reached for his shotgun just as the driver began to transform, his body twisting into a monstrous, fur-covered beast. Eric barely had time to react before the werewolf lunged at him, its yellow eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. He fired off a shot, the silver bullet grazing the creature's shoulder. It howled in pain, but didn't stop. The werewolf's claws slammed into the side of the truck with incredible force, flipping the vehicle over. Eric's world spun as the truck crashed onto its roof, metal screeching as it slid across the wet road. Disoriented, but driven by survival, Eric kicked open the door and scrambled out, grabbing his sword as he fled into the woods. The beast was close behind, snarling as it gave chase. The forest closed in around Eric, the trees a blur as he sprinted through the undergrowth. His breath came in ragged gasps, his mind racing. He was the hunter, but now he was being hunted. The werewolf was relentless, its snarls echoing through the trees as it pursued him. Eric's strong muscles strained as he pushed himself to run faster, his sword strapped securely to his back. He needed time to think, time to plan. But the werewolf wasn't going to give him that luxury. The beast was toying with him, its primal instincts driving it to prolong the hunt. Suddenly, Eric spotted a narrow ravine up ahead. With no other options, he dove into it, tumbling down the steep slope and landing hard in a shallow stream. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself to his feet, knowing the werewolf was still on his trail. The creature appeared at the top of the ravine, its eyes locked on Eric with deadly intent. It leapt down, landing with a splash, and slowly began to stalk toward him, savoring the hunt. Eric's mind raced. He remembered his training, the stories of how his ancestors had faced these beasts. The silver sword, it was his only chance. As the werewolf charged, Eric drew his sword, but the beast was too fast. It slammed into him with brutal force, knocking the sword from his grip and sending him sprawling into the water. Eric gasped in pain as the werewolf's sharp teeth tore into his flesh, the bite searing with a fiery agony. Blood poured from the deep wounds, staining the water red. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Eric's eyes darted to the side, spotting his sword half buried in the mud. The werewolf lunged again, and Eric barely rolled out of the way in time. His body screamed in protest, but he couldn't give up. He couldn't let the beast win. With a surge of adrenaline, Eric dived for the sword, his fingers closing around the hilt, just as the werewolf's claws raked across his back. Pain exploded through him, but he swung the sword upward with all his remaining strength, driving the blade deep into the werewolf's chest. The creature's howl of agony echoed through the ravine, its yellow eyes wide with shock as the ancient silver burned through its flesh. It thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge the blade, but Eric held firm, driving the sword deeper until the werewolf collapsed, its body convulsing in death throes. Breathing heavily, Eric staggered to his feet, his body trembling from the pain and exhaustion. The werewolf lay dead at his feet, its monstrous form slowly reverting back to the truck driver it had once been. But Eric's victory was tainted by the sharp, searing pain of his wounds. He touched the bite mark on his side, his hand coming away slick with blood. The fear crept in, cold and unrelenting. He knew the legends, the stories passed down through his family. A werewolf's bite could turn a man into the very beast he hunted. Staring down at the dead creature, Eric's heart pounded with uncertainty. Would he become a monster, cursed to live as the thing he had spent his life hunting? The thought chilled him to the bone. With a weary sigh, Eric retrieved his sword and began the slow, painful climb out of the ravine. The town still awaited him, and there would be questions. There always were. But for now, Eric's mind was filled with one overwhelming fear, the fear of what he might become. The night was still, the beast was slain, but in the darkness of the forest, another beast might have been born. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel.